So if you don't have access to surfing a lot, then you do want to stay on top of your paddling. Definitely recommend the basis paddle training. There's very little exercises out there that really simulate paddling. And that's where that beautiful tool that you design comes to play. It's going to really be a good reference to train paddling. And also the movement, the repetition, the different resistance, and the technique, how well your strokes are. What are you doing with your strokes? I feel every single injury, it's a sign from the universe for you to slow down and to rethink, regroup, and kind of get a fresh perspective on life itself. Pulling into a backside barrel, that pick dog, that was the most challenging position that required the most range of my hamstring and foot control. I'm 50, I'm not gonna get younger, but that doesn't mean that I cannot get stronger and even more flexible and even increase my range of motion and my mobility.
Is there anything worse than missing the wave of the day because you're too tired to paddle? Do you struggle with paddle power? So the solution is simple. Use the Basis Paddle Trainer just 10 to 20 minutes a couple times a week and you'll transform your wave count and your paddle power. It perfectly simulates the biomechanics of paddling on a surfboard. Unlike elastic resistance bands, this thing actually works. Don't believe me? Hundreds of surfers have already transformed their paddle power. Just ask these guys.
I'm literally doubling my wave count.
I hadn't been surfing for about 4 months. I went on this trip, surfed 8 days straight, 4 to 5 hours a day.
I basically quadrupled my wave count.
Your biggest limiting constraint is your paddle power and your most precious resource is your time. So training with the Basis Paddle Trainer is the single highest returning investment that you can make in your own surfing. It's your cheat code for more waves. So click the link in the description and we'll send you free resources to upgrade your paddle power. Welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Very excited because we have a returning guest, Olympic coach Magnum Martinez. He has been on the podcast before. That was probably one of the more popular podcasts that came out. All the clips pretty much blew up. Very excited to have him back. He's ISA World Masters champ, and he just went through a gnarly recovery, actually hurt himself. So I just want to give you guys the highlights of what we're going to talk about. He went through this insane injury, couldn't surf, came back from it, and ended up riding bigger boards. So we want to talk about what that recovery process was like. What is it like being a surfer as you age, and how do you counter the effects of aging and still be able to perform and, be able to surf well? What is it like? How do you adapt your technique to riding bigger boards? And then I know that you also spent the last summer coaching in California. You're traveling with your Dottie Shakti with a bunch of other up and coming Groms. And, I'm curious like what that long-term process is working with surfers, because a lot of times you have, I would imagine some of your clients come to you and they just get like one session. But what is it like when you do long-term coaching? How does that work? Right. And then how is this different from working with adult surfers? We wanted to get into, because you were able to try out the Basis Paddle Trainer. We'll talk a little bit about that. And if we have time, we might have to do another podcast at another time. I know that you also did a retreat in Indo focused on barrels. And for those of you who don't know, Magnum used to surf pipe. He used to surf heavy Puerto Escondido. And you're going to be my barrel guide, maybe when I come down to Puerto Rico this winter, if I do. Yeah, we got too much to talk about. Well, I also want to talk about what it was like competing for the ISA World Masters champs and all that. But let's just start off with we got way too much, but let's just start off with probably the most recent, I would imagine one of the biggest, struggles you've had is just that injury that you had in coming out of it. Could you just tell us about your injury and what that was like, and then your recovery process?
Yes. Well, thanks again, Van, for having me here on this amazing podcast. I really enjoyed the last time we did our podcast and all the amazing job you do at breaking it up and all the teasers and all the videos. I think you're doing a great job and getting a lot of great people here with really good information. So good on you. Thanks for having me again. And yeah, if we go right into it, man, like I had a pretty solid career without any major injuries up until last year. It was the last swell of the season, I was very blessed. It was then, and it was May, beginning of May, maybe May 9th or 10th. And I was actually surfed middles, overhead, barreling really good, and then got out of the water, and my buddy and I, Raul, were frothing and went and had like a super quick bite to eat, and we went straight to Surfers Beach, which you surfed before. And it was only head high, maybe overhead. There was only like four of us in the water, and it was looking like lowers, but with a little more punch. You know how it gets, like surfers, super rippable. And I just happened, I was getting a little fatigued, to be honest, but I think it didn't really have a lot to do with it because I was surfing well and I did this floater. Floaters can be dangerous. And as I landed, my back foot came off the pad. And I remember one of the things that sticks in my head is like kind of trying to get the back foot back on it on the board. It wasn't like an instant I fell type of thing. So I was trying to do that. And when I figured out that I couldn't, the board kept going away from me and I started to do the splits. I couldn't get the foot off the board, the front foot. And I tried to reach for the board to kind of push it away with my hands too. And right at that moment, I felt the wave hit me on the back and really compressed me. I did the full splits, folded over my front leg over the board, and pushed under the water. And with all that resistance from the water on my board, and I remember being, I don't know, 3-4 foot underwater, still on top of my board with my leg literally on my chest. I'm like, what's going on? And obviously in that moment I felt a really, really violent pull on my leg. And I didn't hear any tear or anything. I was underwater, but I saw stars. When you see black and stars, it's never good. It's never a good sign. So I was like, oh, this is not good. And I came up and I was already in pain immediately. And I just kind of grabbed my board and went to the shore, pointed my board to the shore, had multiple eardrums ruptured. So I know what to do when you're like kind of can't really move. You just gotta grab your board and point it to the shore and just go straight to the shore. You'll be safer on land, and that's maybe one tip right now. But
That's
so
crazy. Oh, sorry.
I
Go ahead.
try to get out. I try to put my foot on the sand and I collapsed. The pain was super high and I just could not put any pressure on my left leg. And I also the pain was so severe I couldn't find like a position so my leg didn't hurt so much, so
Oh my God.
it was a tough one for sure.
I love how this happens at like small surfers and not at Puerto Escondido or Pipe. It's always small waves where you get injured. That's my experience too.
Or even the same day, hours before, surfing middles with punchier and there were barrels and all that, and it was way, way, way more powerful. And it doesn't need to be very powerful for you to hurt yourself.
Right. So what exactly did you hurt? Like, what was it, your adductor, or was it, I mean, because like you're doing the splits, you're kind of going that way, or what was it?
Yeah. So once, I started looking, I knew it was my hamstring or some sort of injury. I was hoping it was like a partial tear or something not too crazy. But once I got the MRI back, there was multiple injuries, but the main injury was I actually pulled the 3 tendons that connect the hamstring, the 3 muscles of the hamstring to the tuberosity like bone, which is our kind of like a round bones of our pelvis that are down, and then the hamstring comes under and attaches right there. So 3, boom, they were all like that. One was farther down, one was kind of close, but they were completely detached from the bone. And I don't know, it might have been a good thing that it didn't retract. My hamstring didn't retract all the way, because usually that's what happens. That's what happened to Mick Fanning.
I was about to say.
It's like coiled back up all the way towards his knee. Right. Mine kind of stay in that position. And for that reason, I wasn't sure if I did that injury, because you can see the bulkiness on your leg when, the whole hammy retracts. So, yeah, this may be a little gross. Not the nicest topic to get into it, but it was, it was
wow.
bad.
That's you ripped your hamstring off the bone. That's insane.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure you were really bummed. I'm sure you were probably depressed for a while, but then how do you come back from, I mean, and it's especially hard as like, an athlete, like this is your life and then you can't surf. That must, I mean, I know when I get injured, I get super bummed and they're just like minor injuries, but ripping your hamstring off, that must have been such a mental challenge. So what did so how did you come back from that?
Yeah, so it was a long process, obviously, and it is a process that goes through different stages, right? So the beginning was tough because 2 weeks trying to deal with getting an MRI, Thank God I got referred to this doctor. It was a great doctor here in Puerto Rico, and he kind of opened up real quick to go see me, and then got the MRI fairly quick, and within 2 weeks, 2 weeks took to schedule the surgery and go under surgery. So he reattached the tendons on the bone, and then it was just a matter of, so there's that kind of stage of the 2 weeks uncertainty, which is really tough because first of all you need to find out what happened, and that's one of the things I like to do the most. Like, all right, let's know exactly what was the injury, so then we know what the next steps are, right? Okay, I said surgery. There's it's better to go and get surgery. Some people are not very active for no surgery, but then you can't run, you can't do a lot of things, which I was like, that's out the door. I want to get back to 100% and hopefully even stronger. So that was right off the bat. That was my mindset. And like, I know, and I'm one of those guys that every time I know somebody with an injury, whether it's a friend, a client, a student, or anyone, even strangers, I just tell them what I know about injuries. And even though I haven't had a major injury, I feel every single injury, it's a sign from the universe for you to slow down and to rethink, regroup, and kind of get a fresh perspective on life itself on many levels. It could be, what are you doing with your life? Where are you moving next? Are you going too hard at your sport or at your work? Are you not listening to the signs we're sending you? And then you're just, we had to give you like the big sign and like, slow down now and think about things from a different perspective. So that's the first thing. And since I preached that, I obviously knew right away. I'm like, okay, this is a call to like settle down. And the first thing I thought about after the surgery, or even before, but once I knew, things were, the repair was done with the surgery, I had to go deep mentally and through meditation and prayer and breathing and visualization and start fixing myself or like helping my body heal, and also really calm myself down and get very level emotionally, so I wouldn't go through this really hard times when you're laying down on your bed and you're a person that's super active and also not being able to work. We have a farm, couldn't help my wife at all. So it was tough, man. It was, I almost get teary eyed. It was
Wow.
like, wow, you're laying down and you're not doing anything. And on top of that, all that burden to my wife to have to take care of me because I couldn't even move. I was like laid out with like a brace on my leg and then crutches. And then, it was really tough moving around. So that was the first thing that happened.
Well, I'm glad you're back, and you definitely seem back. I'm sure it was a long road, but you're so right. You need to get through an injury that gnarly. Like the hardest part in some ways is the mental aspect, especially when it's your entire living like that. The way it is for you. But I'm glad you're back. You made it probably, and you're on the other side of it, and you're stronger than ever. So that's amazing. So maybe let's go dive a little bit deeper into kind of what that rehab process was like. And then I'm curious, like, what were your key takeaways from that rehab process? I'm sure that there's like I'm sure you could go super deep into like what the technical aspects of it, but like, for anybody struggling with an injury, like what were the key things that kept you going, kept you motivated to keep doing it? And maybe, yeah. But let's also dive into some of the, physical therapy aspects of it as well. Like what was really the key? Cause I'm sure a lot of people struggle with, mobility issues with their hamstrings, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So there's so many key aspects that I want to mention as a kind of like point of references for people listening. The hamstring is a really complicated muscle. It doesn't heal very fast, and it tends to go like you're healing and then you hit a plateau and you feel like you're not going anywhere, and then you go back up, and it kind of does that. And I remember my physical therapist here in Rincon, which I'm forever grateful, outside the box. If you're ever here, hopefully nobody needs like rehab, but there's a great facility, in Rincon here in Puerto Rico. And also I've worked and trained with Brad Jones and B Project in California and Carlsbad, who I'm referred endless amounts of athletes and people. And he's a great guy. And I call him right away too. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So he explained to me that the hamstring healing process it's a slow one. It's a tricky one. So just with that, I had to like internalize that. And one of the key takeaways is patient, right? Because a lot of people get ahead of themselves and they start feeling like, oh, maybe it's not a severe injury like mine, but they tore their hamstring a little bit. And this is typical. They get into it and they feel comfortable and they go and re-injure themselves. And this happens so often. I did a lot of research and I saw that a friend of mine that lives here actually did nearly the same injury, but it wasn't as bad. And he was getting better. And then he went and surfed and then pulled it again. So it kind of set him back, a few weeks, a month, or whatever longer. So that's one of the things you want to be careful with. You want to be patient and you want to go through the process of the rehabilitation just very, very meticulously. Just go one step at a time. Don't try to rush it. Just listen to your body. And obviously there's all these other things, there's nutrition, there's hydration, there's all the things that you can add to your diet that can help you heal, that can help you regain muscle mass and maybe not lose it from being inactive, and don't go into super deep levels of atrophy. And also those are going to help you rebuild like muscle and also help those connective tissues heal. Tendons and ligaments are hard, especially tendons. They don't get a lot of blood flow, so you don't get they don't heal as fast. One thing I did, and I started doing very little movement as soon as I could. As soon as I was clear to like, hey, even flexing your quads, and just moving a little bit, because I know movement brings, blood flow, and it also helps, the other parts of your body to stay lubricated, like your joints and stuff. So it's a really tricky fine line between being proactive and not pushing it too hard, right? So I think everybody's different. Everybody have different like pain threshold. So it's like you kind of have to understand your body. Like again, listen to your body and make sure you apply yourself to that whole, all the stages, the different stages and the evolution of that rehabilitation process. Listen to your doctors, right? And make sure that you listen to your body, because at the end of the day, like there's a thing that they do, like a way they measure in physical rehabilitation or physical therapy. Like when you start actually doing exercises, they tell you, okay, from 1 to 10, what's the amount of pain that you're feeling right now? and you shouldn't be over a 4, let's say, right? 5 is medium, 10 is like unbearable pain. And then if you're a 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, max 4, then you're good. You can train that muscle to keep getting stronger without re-injuring it or creating another injury, or so all those little things, maybe not everybody really pays attention to it, are really going to help you understand your situation and get connected to your body, and making sure that you're like pushing yourself, because you have to. Ultimately, you have to push yourself. You have to go through pain, but it doesn't need to be like a high level of pain, because that's your body telling you, hey, buddy, no, like that, this is not good.
Right, right. I mean, how much time were you spending like just doing all these rehab exercises? Because I feel like what the issue, I'm probably not with a catastrophic injury like yours, but like I feel like the most common thing that people do when they get injured is they're like, I'll be fine. And they just do a little bit of PT in the beginning and they're like, oh, okay. And then they feel a little bit better. And then they're like, okay, I can stop, because they just get lazy. And then they re-injure themselves, just like you said, right?
Yep.
But like for a full, I mean, that's the crazy thing. Like fully, tearing your muscle off the bone, like that must have required so much work and so much dedication, doing things that were probably so boring. You know what I'm saying? Boring and painful for a really long time. That's the thing that I would imagine that process is like. I mean, how
Yeah.
would you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really a good point. And along those things of my research, and I have I'm being blessed that I know a lot of people, and I know Mick Fanning, and I know him well enough to like send him a text right away. I'm like, hey, Mick, I just did your injury. It's like, he's like, oh no, like he texts me right away, and it's like, hey man, just get a lot of massage. Once you're getting better, you're gonna do more squats than you ever done in your whole life, and just be patient with it. And he said he was back in the water around the 5.5, 6 months mark, and he started kind of, he eased himself into with a longboard, then whatever, start going down to his shortboards. And so I had that reference, right? Obviously, I'm 50. Mick did it when I think probably was in his late 20s or mid 20s. I don't remember. So he's much younger, and he probably had access to a lot more, equipment, and a lot more sessions of rehab that I did, right? My rehab was in Rincon, 45 minutes at least away. I drove there twice a week, right? And the rehab started very slow, right? And then it started evolving soon enough when I was cleared to start rehabbing. But then I also took I went from the 2 crutches, and the doctor's like, then you use 1 crutch, then use a cane. And I remember I went from the 2 crutches, I went to a cane, because the 1 crutch, I did it maybe 5 days, and I was like, okay, I can use a cane. I can put just enough weight on my leg. And literally within 10 days, I flew to California, which it was like the doctors were like, well, you're going to sit a long time. That's, be careful. So I took my Theragun with me. Theragun's a great tool to keep everything loose, and, and like the blood flow and all that. And also, once I went to California, I was going down to lower trestles to work. I was coaching. I had all these plans to go coach and training camps and stuff. But so I got on a bike, which was scary, but I was already doing stationary bike, as soon as I start the process of rehab. So I was just being careful, not riding very carefully down the trail, and actually taking advantage of that, pedaling slowly to keep that going. And then I went and saw Brad over there, and I did like 2 sessions a week. So that helped a lot as well. I kept on with my physical therapy, and to the point that you made just recently, it's like, I cannot tell you how many people I hear saying the same. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine now. My shoulder's fine. My knee's fine. My ankle, my hammy, whatever. And they cut short their rehab process and then they get re-injured so often. So if there is something we can tell people here, to take their time to listen to their body and make sure you go through the whole rehab process. Although I'm going to say, not, it's like everything. Not all doctors are great. Not all physical therapists are great. Not all surfers are great. Not all humans are great. And that's just, there's better, some are better than others. So you always, that's why you want to be connected with your body, because your body will let you know, okay, you can do this, or that doesn't feel good. So it's important to go through the whole process, and it's a long process. And it took me 5.5, almost a 6-month mark to actually enter the water again.
That must have been hard. Well, you getting injured like that, I mean, that was just the wave hitting you, your foot slipping. But, you know, I'm not an expert in hamstring injuries and whatnot, but was there anything, you know, I'm just thinking about what advice would you give to somebody who hasn't injured themselves like that, but wants to prevent it? Like, is it a weakness in posterior chain? Do you think that more surfers should train like squats and things to prevent these kinds of injuries? Or was that just like a freak accident? There's no way you could have controlled that, you know?
That's a great point. And I think when you're going to get injured, you are going to get injured. If it's one of those, like, because I look at it from a deeper perspective, that, you know, what I mentioned about the universe and God telling you, hey, you need to slow down. But with that said, if you want to prevent injury, right, to the highest level, if you're really active, you do need to be condition your body, you know, be strong, have a lot of mobility and flexibility to withstand sudden, you know, like ranges of motion where like maybe you slip or something happens and you get pushed to your limits. Because the more flexibility you have, the more range you have, the more you're going to withstand, right? If that accident were to happen again, I don't want to blow my hamstring again or pull it off a bone. And the only way you can prevent that from happening, if it happens, is to be able to do a split and be okay with it. And that's kind of, that's extreme.
That's
right?
that's a lofty goal. I don't know many people that can do that, you know?
And then, you know, I go back to where I started doing yoga when I was, you know, in 1999. I don't know how old I was, but I was one of the stiffest persons you knew. I could not even come close to touch my toes, my legs straight. It hurt so much. My hamstrings were super tight. And then in 1 year of doing yoga, like a couple times a week, I was able to do not the full splits, but like pretty close. And like the front split close, not all the way, but like, you know, I was very surprised once, like all of a sudden I was like, wow, I became so much more flexible by sticking to a program, right? So now what I'm doing, it's I'm strengthening my body, you know, like I had to go through, I think I stopped my rehab per se in Rincon in May. So that's nearly 10, 11 months, right? That I went through rehab. Even after I got in the water, I started surfing, you know, and we'll go through that, all the levels, stages of my boards, and how I started pushing myself more and more and more, and a little bit bigger waves and all that. And then, but the whole thing is that I stopped going to the two times a week, you know, rehab. And I went into 5 days a week, most of the weeks of training myself at the gym and on my own, you know, because I'm like, there's no turning back here. I'm 50. I'm not going to get younger, but that doesn't mean that I cannot get stronger and even more flexible and even increase my range of motion and my mobility, because that's how I feel anyways. I know certain people differ on that, you know, perspective. They're like, oh, you're getting older, whatever. And I'm like, sorry, I don't even think about that. I think, can I get stronger? Yeah. Can I be more flexible? Yeah. Can I have more range of motion? Yeah. Let's go for it.
I think that mindset is so important. I think so many people just resign themselves and they're saying like, I'm old, so there's nothing I can do about it. But so much is just like, I think there's been a lot of science on this. It's really just use it or lose it. Like the reason why people get out of shape and they have all these issues is because they just stop training. And if you want to be surfing when you're 70, you know, like you got to do it now, right? You got to be doing it now. So
There's a great
really,
saying, yeah, that you said that you don't get all, what is it again? Like oh man, I forgot, but it's something like at the end of the day, it's like you you stop surfing because you get all because you stop
right.
surfing.
Yeah.
In a way, obviously,
Very
but
true.
then nutrition and all this stuff, your mind, there's a lot of components to it. But I believe that you can be in great shape through your 60s easily and then be super mobile and functional through your 70s,
For sure. Well, so let's get into, what it was like getting back in the water, having all these like strength and mobility issues, because it's almost like you're relearning how to surf. You're going from bigger boards to gradually smaller boards. You're figuring out like maybe, I don't know, maybe your body mechanics have changed because you have this injury and you have to like figure it all out again. You've been out of the water for 6 months or more, So like, what was that whole process like? And what did it teach you? What did it teach you that is going to help other surfers who are just learning, like maybe you're riding a bigger board and you're trying to figure out how to do a turn or generate speed, like, what can people learn and how can people benefit from the pain that you had?
Yeah, so that's a great point too. My biggest challenge, because my left hamstring still not in the doesn't have the same range of motion as my right one. Even we're like, here a year, 3-4 months after the surgery, was actually popping up. The pop up was hard, not because I have the strength of my body. My whole body was, already strong enough to do everything and feel really good, but the range of motion, and it's my front leg. So right, I'm a regular footer, so it's my left leg goes on the front, and I didn't have that range of motion to where you gotta have your knee close to your chest, and that was really tough getting just popping up on my board. Also, there was this limited kind of almost, it felt like a disconnection between my hip and my foot, where there was quite a lot of restraint on my foot, even though I was still already training a lot and doing all kinds of exercises. It was just hard to get the foot to respond the same way it did before, my front foot. So going backside was actually a real challenge, because I felt like I couldn't dig in my heel to make the board respond and go in that inside rail like good enough. And popping up was already weird. I would pop up and not be in the perfect spot or close to optimal spot on my board, my front foot. So it kind of taught me the importance of your stance and where you stand on your board, right? How crucial it is when that front foot's a little off, and obviously the back foot too, but in this case was my front foot was a little too on the side of the board, or a little too wide, or whatever it was, or even having that kind of disconnection, that feeling to it, that I felt like I couldn't quite move it, or it wouldn't articulate the same way. So yeah, it was challenging. And that one, after I started surfing, maybe November, it happened May. I started surfing November. I remember still struggling through like January, February, maybe still kind of like, wow, sometimes I can get up, properly on my board.
So how did you solve that? Because I feel like a lot of people struggle with their pop up with that, that limitation with their foot and with their front leg as well, right? That's the hardest part, is getting that front foot in front. So was it just a matter of, increasing that range of motion and then training your foot so that you could, have the strength and the mobility to do that? Or did you adjust your technique at all? Or what was how did you overcome that?
So I had to actually get some work done, like just manual therapy, to kind of help loosen up the joints and all the tissue around it, and get that range of motion, at least start breaking it free more, right? And but also I just a lot of physical therapy, a lot of training, a lot of mobility work, Also, I did a lot of the ladder, the ladder that you lay on the floor, and did a lot of those exercises where you're like hopping in and out, sideways, jumping side to side. I did a lot of box jumps, landing in one foot, sideways, landing forward, backwards, jumping from, one, knee on the one foot on the ground, and not only pushing from one leg up onto a box. So there's a lot of things you can do to strengthen it. But I feel, and this goes back to what Meg told me, it's like, you got to get a lot of massage, and the, the, the manual therapy is going to really help that tissue recover faster, right? You start breaking down all the scar tissue or all the limitations, and allow that blood flow and that range of motion to increase. It's really going to help your training. It's going to allow you to evolve quicker, right? And no, I know I didn't do it enough. Now, because when I went back to California this summer, I went and got, I think, 1 or 2 sessions with Brad, and he's a really good manual therapy, like physical therapist. But to me, he's the absolute best manual therapy guy that I ever worked with. And I've seen quite a few guys and women too. And it was a big difference. 2 sessions with him, he just kind of just helped me get to the next level faster, right? And then once I was in Indo, I was like, okay, it's game on, I don't have to, because pulling in into a backside barrel, that pig dog, that was the most challenging position I could have gone onto on my board, because that required the most range of my hamstring and foot control.
Right.
So that one was hard, and that's a supernatural thing for me. I feel like I'm really almost better backside barrel rider than I'm a frontside barrel rider. So that was a tough one. I didn't try. I remember surfing survivals for the first time, and I happened to take my 20, and there were some barrels, and I was like kind of struggling. I'm like, I don't know if I should be breaking myself into backside barrel ridings at this wave.
Right,
like,
right.
Maybe not ideal.
Yeah. Oh my God. You do not want to be second guessing your pop up when you're pulling into a heavy barrel at a reef. Like that. That's not a fun place to be thinking about worrying about that. So,
but it's awesome, because it actually is such a blessing. And that's why I always go back to that. I've learned so much through this injury, and I've, it's such a humble pie, as well as, hey, you can get in better shape. Like, you weren't actually doing the due diligence to be in better shape, and you can be. And now I feel, even though I'm way better shape now, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get in better shape. And at 51, and I feel like there's no limitations, and also has to do with this guy. But also, like, going through those process, like all those limitations in your pop-up, in, your placement, your stance. And it's like, oh man, there's so much to it. There's so many little intricacies, little details that go into surfing, that if let's say you're like, 40, 50, 60-year-old, and you're kind of like feeling a little weird on your stance, and you may not understand that, maybe your foot placement, maybe your foot, I see this a lot, your foot's off on the side of the board, so then when you, let's say it's on your outside rail, then when you want to lean into the inside rail, you're more kind of, you're struggling to get the board on the rail, because that foot's just off center, right? So there's so many things that, this kind of relates to it.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that. That's a really good tip. I mean, so, you're coming back, you have to ride bigger boards. Usually you're riding, tiny boards, very rippable boards. And now you're back to riding these big boards. And I'm sure that you want to still be able to have fun, generate speed, and do turns. So, and I feel like this is going to be helpful for a lot of people who are riding bigger boards, and they struggle to generate speed and do turns. So how did you have to adjust your technique? What did you learn from that experience that would help others when they're riding bigger boards?
Yeah. So when I got hurt, I immediately, when I thought of going back to the water, which probably, I don't know how long it took. I wasn't trying to get ahead of myself, but I was like, wow, my wife has my rehab boards. Like, I'm stoked. I don't have to go purchase a new board or get a board made for me, but she has two boards that were amazing in my, rehab process. The first one is this 6'4", the model's called a micro tank. It's a Duke IPA model, and it looks just like a longboard, but it's a 6'4", and it has these crazy rails. It's got like a double edge, has like the rails almost like a diamond rail, and then it has an edge at the bottom where you'll have your normal edge, and kind of one at the apex of the rail, and then it kind of goes really high up, and then it kind of blends and disappears one to one, and it's round nose, it's round, and it's kind of flat to where you can walk and you can do nose rides. And then it has a really nice pulled-in tail, so has a single fin box, and then you can have from a single fin to a quad to whatever twin fin. So this board really helped me. I rode it before in little ways, but I always thought, man, like this board, maybe like 4 or 5 foot wilderness would be so fun, because you can do anything on it. It's like a longboard and a shortboard all in one. So just messing around with that board really helped me get a feel of like, okay, yeah, you obviously knowing longboarding, like if somebody can turn a 10-foot longboard or a 9-foot board, how do they do it? They're definitely not in the middle of the board, right? And their back foot needs to be all the way back. So that goes back to what we teach, like most of us coaches always, when we see a little limitation, like how you can change directions quick enough, and usually starts from that back foot not being far back enough, right? So with this longer boards, for me, 6'4", it's a longer board, but with this board, once I started getting a little more confident, then I could do little turns and cutbacks, and you just have to go all the way back, as far back as you can, to make sure that board is turning nice and loose. If you were like, if my foot, let's say this is my back foot, front foot, if this back foot, it's just 1 foot in front, that makes a huge difference in how that board is going to turn. If it's all the way back, it really loosens up the board. If it's a couple feet forward, it's going to want to go, the board's going to want to drive more down the line, but it's not going to want to turn in a dime, right? So it just gives you a lot of awareness, and it gave me a lot of awareness, and also being able to walk to the nose and kind of like be like, okay, I don't want to do the shuffle. If I've coached longboarders, and like the proper way to do it is the cross step, and actually the smoothness of how you can do it, like the flow that you can, make it look nice and effortless, and not like you're like,
Yep.
killing cockroaches, like, which is funny. And hey, you really get appreciation for longboarders, and how smooth they can be, and how effortless and beautiful they can make riding a longboard look. So that kind of helped me a lot, and also, yeah, it just gave me more awareness that you just have to be, if you want to turn, you have to be on the tail. If you want to trim, you want to generate a lot of speed, then certain boards allow you to be in the center of the board or farther up, even towards the nose, and you can still get a lot of drive forward, which is super fun. But then all comes back to like, you want to turn tight, move back.
No, that's great advice. Was there anything else that riding bigger boards changed in your approach, or any other wisdom that you would give to people so they should move further back? How did it affect your approach to riding waves? Has any of that changed the way you surf when you surf smaller boards as well?
Well, I've when I used to go to Hawaii a lot and spend winters there. I to their way back then when most people rode 7.6s, 7.10s, 7.4s, 7.2s was kind of like on the shorter side of guns to when we were surfing Sunset and even competing. Nowadays, that's long gone. Like, John rides a 6.2. He's in Martian, so I don't recommend you go follow his footsteps because he's one of a kind. But then everybody start riding shorter boards nowadays. They ride 6.6s, 6.4s, 6.2s, maybe 6.8s. Like, whoa, like it's pumping. I need to navigate the lineup a little better. But back in the day, I'm talking about late 90s, early 2000s, we were all riding longer boards, even myself, which I usually ride 2, 3, 4 inches shorter than a guy that is 6 foot, 6'2", whatever. So the Hawaiians, I remember at the beginning of the season, because I used to show up in October sometimes, they'll start riding their 7.6s in like Camiland on this little wave, like, which is just down from Sunset and between kind of Monster Mush and Sunset. And it's just perfect little ride, super fun and playful. You can go out there on a shortboard and fish and kill it. But they were riding their 7.6s on that and kind of getting the feel of it just prior to taking it out when the wave actually swell showed up. And it's like 8, 10, 12-foot Sunset, bombing. And that was actually a really good thing that I took to. And then also getting on those longer boards, like figuring out how to turn a board that big at Sunset, which is not an easy wave. It has a hard transition from like a really slopey bottom to maybe like a backwashy, like super, like pitchy lip that it's very unpredictable. And you're going really fast and it's hard, it's not an easy way to surf. So that was epic for me. And I think I went back when I got back on my wife's board after this injury. And I kind of went back and drew back from my experiences riding longer boards. Because nowadays I don't ride a longer board ever. Like, it could be 10, 12 feet, 15, 20-foot faces. And I'm on like a 5.9 or it's 6 or I don't know. It's kind of funny. But if it goes to like the next level, then I have a 7.10 big gun that I can catch probably as big as a wave I want to see coming my way and not be like, what am I doing out here? I don't need a bigger board. So I don't need to be out here anyway. So with that said, I remember riding that board too on the last Tres Palmas swell as a 7.10, and I rode it as a quad. And this board, I was able to actually do full turns on it, like, and I was blown away. Like literally, biggest board I ever owned, 7.10, like 2 3/4 thick, but like really thinned out, like really high performance gun, shaped by Roberto Clima from Climax Surfboards from Peru, the great shaper. Anyway, to not lose the point, like going back to riding when I start stepping up and riding bigger waves on my wife's board, which probably not shape designed to ride anything over 6 foot, 8 foot. But I remember an 8, almost 10-foot day at a Wilderness, which is a more forgiving wave, and I changed the fins, put it as a twin fin, and I was like a little more confident, a little bit stronger. I could feel like I'm gonna move my foot back. I gotta put my foot over the fins to bottom turn and be able to like dig in the rail and allow the board to actually respond properly. Because if you're going really fast and your foot's a little bit forward and you try to do kind of a good bottom turn, may not be the best thing. The board may not respond. Same as you're going to do a big turn, gotta move that foot back. And going back to that, I think that, I don't know if whoever's watched the episode or it's not like a stab in the dark, but what is it, the acid test or with Dave Rasovich?
Yeah.
Right? And he talks about how when you ride a board with like wider tails, you kind of have to adjust the side of the rail, or the side of the board where your back foot is, in order to be able to dig in that rail. And that's super true. Very, it's a great tip, because sometimes you're going really fast, and if your foot's a little bit off, you may not be able to dig in that rail as much as you want to. So that's something to be really aware of, and obviously takes time to become aware to that. But if it's in your mind and you pay attention to it, you soon enough you're gonna start noticing.
Yeah. Well, here's a question for you. I mean, do you think it's better to work on your turns on a bigger board or on a smaller board if you're trying to get better at it?
That's a great
What's your opinion on that?
That's a great question. So I'll tell you from the perspective of kids learning how to surf. I feel like some parents give him, everybody nowadays, you don't have to learn how to surf on a shortboard. You learn how to surf on a soft top. My daughter was 2, and she was on a 6'4". We bought her a 6'4" soft, perfect, not too big, not too bulky. She can stand on it. She's a featherweight. And then as she progressed, we kept going shorter and shorter, but we went from like 5'10", 5'8", 5'6", and she's riding my boards or mom's boards, whatever. But one thing I see is like sometimes if you go too short and you haven't developed a proper technique to surf on the rail properly, then you go into a too short of a board, you may skip that learning process, and it may be detrimental to your surf technique, right? You may not hold the rail long enough. You may just kind of skate around the flats, or kind of disrupts the flow on your line, a proper line, because most of the boards are designed to be on rail. You don't want to go flat. You go flat just in certain moments, maybe you're dropping on the face, but then the rocker and the outline and all the curve that it's on the board is designed for the board to turn on the rail, right? So you want to be on the rail as much possible without breaking that line. That's something I love. I'm really passionate about teaching and making sure people apply. It's just hold the rail as long as possible, as long as the section calls for, right? If you have, and I'll go quickly into a quick example, a lot of people try and do snaps on like slopier sections, right? Maybe it's not a really steep section of the wave, maybe it's a little bit like slopier, and they set the rail and they push and they extend their back leg, or they push the tail. And then what happens is, you're going to do a snap, but then you're going to lose all your projection, all your speed, and then get stuck or get hung up to a certain extent on top of the wave, because the wave doesn't have the enough vertical gradient on the face of the wave. So you're going to get stuck. On the other, side of things, if you drive through, you set your board on the rail and you drive more on the rail through that turn, and at the end, once you have enough speed and you're carving back into the whitewater, you extend your back leg, just to say one example, between 2 different turns. Then you're going to be able to drive through and come out of that turn with a lot more speed, not getting hung up. And also it looks more fluid, looks like more appropriate, right? It's like you chose a more appropriate turn for the section, right? So that's one thing that I feel like you can miss if you jump to a shorter board too soon during your developing stages, right? And that's one thing I know. I make sure my daughter was like, she hardly hops, hardly ever. She's always rail to rail, because we didn't go too short too soon, right? And I got some, I heard it from some of my friends and coaches, like, or maybe a little too long. I'm like, she's still developing. Let her develop that line to a point that you jump on a skimboard and it's not going to ruin your technique now. But sometimes you go to a too short a board, that happens. Now, on the other side of things, if you are on a board that it's too long, I like, and I have clients from all levels, right? So let's say you're 40 years old, 35, but you started surfing 5 years ago and you're riding a mid length. And then maybe you're riding a 6'8", you're a 6-foot guy, 180, whatever. And then, the waves may call for something a little bit shorter. That doesn't mean that you're going to be struggling because you're under volume or you're like, you're sinking too much. But maybe, and it's really depends on your level and the type of waves that you're riding, right? So all of a sudden you're like, okay, that's 7.0. It's a little too much. Maybe you can jump down to a 6'8", even a 6'6", but go a little bit wider. You can go thicker, but don't go thick all the way on the rail because then you can't sink the board, right? That's a huge one that I feel a lot of people miss. They go thicker, but then the board has a huge rail, like a lot of volume on the rail. And it doesn't matter how powerful you are, you may not be able to sink that rail. And if the board can't be on the rail, it's going to go flat. You can't turn it sharp. And there it goes. It's like, I know for me, the tail block of the board, it's so crucial that if it's like a quarter of an inch too thick, I can't sink it whenever I want. I have to nurse my turns, even my bottom turns, and then I can't surf the way I want to. And to me, it's like,
Yeah, no, that dichotomy is so true, and I'm curious to hear your perspective. Like my perspective is, if you're struggling with your surfing, there's like, obviously it depends on your level, right? But riding a bigger board can help a lot of surfers because then they can just finally catch more waves and it slows your surfing down. You can read the wave better. You'll make sections that you haven't been able to make before. But then once you get to a certain level and you're ready to really try and do maneuvers properly, too big of a board is just going to be a hindrance and it's going to hold you back. And I feel like you can turn bigger boards. Like obviously, Magnum, you are, doing great on your 6'4", the mini tank, but it requires more. You have to have like your body mechanics really dialed in order to turn a bigger board, right? So at a certain point, you actually want to really start reducing volume so you can engage the rail, and so the board is going to be responsive. And then that's going to allow you to unlock your progression. But the hard part, of course, is it is going to be more sensitive. And as a result, your surfing may look worse in the beginning because you're like riding an F1 car as opposed to riding a semi truck now. But then you have to go through that painful process. And then eventually the board is going to finally be able to respond to you. And then you're going to be able to figure it out. What do you think about that?
yeah, I agree 100%. And there, and with that said, the board you choose and how you choose to step down or even up has a lot to do with it, right? Like I know for all my experience what I just said. If the tail's too thick, I can't turn the board like how I want it. So for me, it's a no-no. But I can ride a way bigger board. But if the tail's thin enough that when I press for my weight, I can sink that tail in and then it bites, then I can turn anything, really, So it really has to do with that a lot. And nowadays there's so many different types of designs out there and different types of boards, and they're really fun. And I think we're living in the best era surfboard wise, because we have so many options, right? We can get not only fishes nowadays, but we can get quads and single fins and 2+1s and 5 fins, and now like even the twinsers are coming back into play, and it's super fun. But it's it also is really like it makes it a little bit more challenging to understand what works for you and when it's too much or when it's too little, right? I feel like most people go too much because now it's like from the 90s when Kelly started riding those super rocker boards and 17 3/4, 2 1/4, 2 1/8, like yeah, that's what I rode, and I'm super light and short and whatever. And that kind of ruined people that like
Yeah.
weren't supposed to be riding those type of things because they're too much volume in their body for that. But now you have all this plethora of like, you can choose all kinds of different boards. So I will say that it's so important when you feel like you need to try something new, or you want to test something, or you feel like you're advancing, so maybe you want to step down into something, or maybe you want to step up, just get advice from somebody that really knows. And a lot of times shapers will give you that advice, and they're really knowledgeable about it because they've been doing it for a long time. But nowadays there's so many coaches out there, so many people that are clued in to it, that I will say first seek some kind of source of, like, a valid source of information, so then you can make the right decision. That's why I love Noel Salas, and even though he's my dear friend, I feel like he brings so much value to his community, because he's really talking about things that, he's educating his community, and he's giving this information to people so they can make the right decision when they want a surfboard. And working with him in some podcasts too, it's been amazing, because it's like people hit me up, hey, you have that board, what do you think I should ride? Like, I'm 5'10" and X amount of weight and blah blah blah. And I'm like, awesome, that's great. I love to give that advice, because you're going to be having more fun with the right type of equipment. So yeah, like, and I said one more thing about going longer. When you're having trouble and you're maybe surfing flatter on whatever boards you're riding, maybe going a little bit longer, a little bit narrower, depending again on the type of board, on the type of wave you're surfing, will help you. Because a longer rail line, it's gonna make you put that board on the rail and hold the rail longer. If you want to surf a 6'5", like you surf a 5'10", there's going to be a little bit of a challenge there. And it's not supposed to. You have way more rail line in the water, so that calls for longer, lines, for longer. You got to draw more longer lines, right? You got to hold that rail longer in the water. So surf with more amplitude, and that's why it's so good. And even I would recommend it to like up and coming pros, or like kids that are surfing really good, and that maybe a little bit scattered, maybe too flat, or like get on a longer board, get on a single fin, and feel the difference. A single fin, if you go flat, you're not going anywhere. You can go flat down, like I said, on the slope and going down, but you have to put that board on the rail. If you push too hard, you're going to spin out. You gotta, it really requires from you to become sensitive to the board and what the board wants to be doing. So then you can adjust to it, and then it's going to enhance your, the way you're surfing, your technique and everything. As a matter of fact, we ordered a single fin for one of my students recently from Duke IPA. And when I told Duke that the reason we were doing it, he loved it. He's like, I love that. I love that you suggested a single fin to your student, that it's on an intermediate level, and already know how to surf and do turns. But I feel like instead of riding these fishes, these quads, or this, like hybrid boards, a single fin will be really medicinal to his line, to the way he approaches the wave.
Interesting. Yeah. I remember, I think Kelly Slater was talking to Clay Marzo about how, Clay needs to, like, he was like, Clay, obviously you rip, but like your bottom turn, you need to work on your bottom turn. And I think Kelly's advice was get on a single fin. That's what it was.
They're amazing boards. And, well, imagine Clay, maybe he'll only take that from Kelly.
Yeah, exactly. Not many people can give Clay any advice at all. So yeah.
Yeah, he's such a freak of nature, and such an amazing, spectacular surfer. But Kelly's written everything, and you can see, what I do? I love watching Kelly's old footage. I often show it to my daughter. I'm like, let's watch 110, 240, or like, Mondo Extreme Experiment, like all Quicksilver videos.
Oh, that's sick.
His technique then, I mean, he's the best of the best, but his technique and his style, everything was so perfect that it's pretty crazy to watch.
Yeah. Well, discussing the volume, and like coming down in volume so you can engage in your rail. I forgot to mention one thing, because I think that for me personally is one of the things that has really helped me unlock my surfing. But the struggle, the eternal struggle, is you have to be in better paddle shape in order to ride smaller boards generally, and so you got to try the basis paddle trainer, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. How did it work for you? How did you feel?
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually a great point. And before I jump on it, like you can obviously adjust the volume of your bore and that on your chest and all that. So it kind of gives you that extra paddling power. I know when I order boards for heavier waves that I gotta paddle faster, more slabby, you need more foam underneath your chest. Not necessarily on the rail again, but you do need it under your chest so you can paddle faster, and the board still needs to knife through that like steep takeoff. So that's one more thing that maybe we left out, that it's very important, and it's that volume under your chest that may not have anything to do with the rest of the board, right? To say something, but going back to this is great because like paddle the technical aspect of paddling is, there's so many things to it that, yeah, there's a lot of technical parts to it, and then there's the strength part of it, right? So if you're a person like yourself who lives in New York, and you don't have access to surfing a lot, then you do want to stay on top of it, on top of your body, on top of your paddling, and you need certain tools and certain things to help you do that. And you can train out of the water a lot and on the gym and do all these exercises, and it's going to keep you fit and strong and give you endurance. But because surfing is such a unique sport, and when you're paddling, you're laying on top of your board, and it's somewhat compressing a little bit your lung capacity. There's very little exercises out there that really simulate paddling, right? And that's where that beautiful tool that you design comes to play, because you can lay it on a bench and even have more, because at least when you're in the water and you're bored, there's a little bit of a give, right? When you're laying on a bench, there's no water cushioning, nothing. So it's going to really be a good reference to train paddling. And also the movement, the repetition, the different resistance, and the technique, how well your strokes are. What are you doing with your strokes? So all these things, there's so much to it. This training camp that I did in Indo was focused on how to surf better waves, hollower waves, and that has everything to do with how you paddle into a wave. The angle you take, how efficient your paddling is, and how you actually, like, the angle you take into that takeoff. So it all goes back to being able to paddle well, to have proper technique. And sometimes I see people that in the water that I don't know, maybe I know, and I know they're fit, they look fit, but their paddling technique is not very up to par. So they're really exerting a lot of effort and energy, but they're not really being efficient with the way they're paddling, what their strokes are, how the strokes are. And the result, it's like, you're exhausting yourself and you're still frustrated because you can't catch as many waves. So yeah, definitely recommend the basis paddle training. I want to say it properly because it's really cool. I did it also. I tried it on a Swiss ball to create more instability. It's a little bit more challenging, but I like adding different things and challenges to different exercises. So, but I like what you created there, because it really, I train a lot, and I surf quite a bit. So like my paddle is the last thing I'm worried about, because I paddle so much. I'm light and I have a big paddle. Although I pay attention to my technique, and I still till the day, like, if it's a long paddle, if it's a fast paddle, if I'm paddling for a hollow wave, which you paddle a lot faster, I pay attention to what I'm doing so I can actually improve my technique and be more efficient, because it's so crucial. It doesn't matter your level. It's so crucial to how many waves you're going to catch, if you're going to be able to make the wave, make that takeoff or that drop, or if you're going to get hung up, or if you're going to, whatever, maybe miss the wave, which it happens a lot. So it really kind of goes full circle, right? And it's a really important aspect of surfing.
For sure, for sure. No, I'm glad to hear that you liked it. And that technique aspect of it, I think, is so crucial as well. Most people aren't aware of what they're doing when they're paddling at all. They're just like, I'm just going to grab the water, and they can make all sorts of mistakes. It's interesting. So one of the guys in the community, he was a lifelong surfer, lifelong swimmer as well, competitive swimmer. He even coached his daughter. And when he was using the device, that's when he realized that his technique was actually slightly off. And then because, you can just train on land and you can analyze your technique, and, you can submit footage into the community for feedback and whatnot. He was like, oh my God, I wasn't doing this thing correctly. And then he made that one tweak. And then immediately his buddy was like, dude, I've never seen you make it out the back that quick. And it was just like, oh, yep, it was just that one little tweak, So it's like a combination of the technique, but then also you can have the best technique in the world, and that's definitely going to help. But if you're just out of shape, you're going to struggle. You're just going to get exhausted. So, living in New York, like this has been like the quietest hurricane season ever, right? Like we had Aaron, and then it's been, I think it's been like 100 years since it's been this quiet, right? So some crazy statistic.
You mentioned that because I was saying this is the worst September for waves I can even remember.
Right. Yeah.
Even here in Puerto Rico. So.
Right, exactly. So you don't surf a ton, and then you go to Puerto Rico and then you're surfing 5 hours a day every single day. Like even if you have good technique, you're still going to get smoked. So that's why I designed it, because I was like, how do I roll up on trips and be in shape even though I live an hour from the beach and I can't surf every day, So hopefully it can help other people as well.
So let me ask you that now. Like I'll the question. Since you've been using it, you created and helped design this thing. How has it been for you? Like, how often do you use it? And what feedback do you have?
I mean, it's been kind of insane. So, living in New York, I don't get to surf a ton. Summer, a lot of people surf a ton, but this is also, I'm just so busy just with the work and running this business.
Yeah.
So I didn't surf for 3 months. And then I went to a wave pool. I went to the wave pool in Edinburgh, and I literally rocked up, haven't surfed for 3 months, and I caught literally like 150 waves.
Wow.
I was smoked. Like, I don't know if you guys you've ever surfed a wave garden. It's totally unlike the BSR. At the BSR wave pool, you walk around. This guy, you catch the wave and then you walk back. You have to paddle back. And you're just nonstop paddling for every hour. For each session is about an hour, and you're just nonstop paddling the entire time, because most, your ride is just, it's pretty short, right? I mean, it's a long wave, but
and that was something at Waco I noticed. I'm like, you barely paddle here. I had to paddle my brains off because I got to the first to my group a little late.
Yeah.
And I was about to miss my wave, and I was like, no, that's not happening. And I paddled super fast. And that was the only paddling I did. Everything else was super mellow. The current pushes you back out. Yeah. But I didn't know this about the wave garden technology. You got to paddle more.
You have to paddle a ton, but you also get more waves. So if you can paddle continuously without taking a break, then you can catch 20 plus waves an hour.
That's my type of wave.
Yeah. So,
like, all right, let's see who's done their homework. Let's
exactly
catch more waves.
Yeah. And
that's funny. I didn't know that. That's epic.
Yeah. And all I did to prepare was I just trained on the basis trainer. And
you felt good. You felt ready.
I mean, I will say I didn't get to prepare as much as I would normally prepare because it was a last minute trip. And I was smoked by the end of it. I mean, I had half a day of surfing, and then a full day of surfing, and then a half day of surfing. I did 8 sessions. In each session, you're catching like 20 waves. And then I had 5 more sessions planned. I was trying to be like, can I catch 250 waves or something like this? But then I had a similar injury to you where my board slipped out. I was finishing my turn, and then like I think my heel side inside rail on, you know, my back foot kind of slipped, and then it popped out, and then my front foot kept on going, and I strained my groin muscle. It wasn't like catastrophic. It was, but I could feel it pull, and I was like,
Yeah.
and then I was like, ooh, and then I'm like trying to like walk, and I'm feeling the pain. I'm like, okay, I can't surf anymore. There was a part of me that was tempted to keep going, but I was like, I know if I do it again,
I'm glad you didn't, because that's what could happen with those injuries. That type of movement, you can either hurt your hamstring, your groin muscle, or your knee. Like Italo, I don't know if you remember that like split that he did, Italo, that floater at Jeffreys Bay, and then his back foot came off, but then his front knee kind of went in and hit the deck, and he messed up. And a guy that fit, imagine.
Yeah.
You know, he's probably the fittest surfer there is. Like, he's a freak.
For sure. Yeah. So that's what cut it short. I will say though, I was smoked by the end of it. You know,
Yeah.
I was definitely smoked, but that's because I didn't properly train. Like normally I'd be training months in advance. So I'm getting ready, like, you know, November, I'll probably go on a proper trip. So I'm properly starting to train now.
Good.
I mean, really what I was doing is for 3 weeks leading up to surfing the wave pool, I was paddling 2 or 3 times a week for like 10 to 20 minutes. And then I went from 0 surfing for 3 months, and then I caught 150, well, you know, around there, 150 waves. So,
And that's not like a crazy amount of training either. Like, that's good. That kept you like on good shape, on good paddling.
I mean, I will say that I think I have a already like a base, because, you know, I've just been using this, and in the winter I surf a lot. But I mean, that was 8 sessions that I surfed. That's 8 hours of paddling, literally 8 hours, because you're paddling the entire time. I was literally paddling for like 8 hours, you know?
That's interesting. I kind of like that, because like you don't want to make, I don't think the wave pool thing, it could get too easy, and it may miss a little bit of the essence of surfing. So that actually sounds cool, that there's different dynamics where you need to paddle more, and then if you paddle more and you're in better shape, then you can catch more waves. I think that's great.
Well, I think if you surf a wave pool like the Wave Garden, that's better for you, because now you get in shape and you work on your technique. Because if you just surf BSR, you can't go on a surf. I mean, you can go on a surf trip, but you're definitely going to need a basis paddle trainer, because you're gonna get exhausted. But if you surf the Wave Garden all the time, you could actually just surf the Wave Garden and get all your paddle fitness, and you probably be fine. You know, if you
is your basis paddle trainer already at Waco and at BSR? Because that's
not yet. Yeah, maybe the Texas one, the Texas guys need it if they want to go on surf trips for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man. All right. Well, dude, we've already been going for an hour, nearly an hour and a half. So I think we're gonna have to save those other topics for another podcast. But as always, Magnum, it was very fun chatting. Where can people find you if they want to get a hold of you, ask questions about boards and technique and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Van. It's so much fun just talking about surfing, and hopefully this brings good value to your community and everybody that watches. And yeah, that's what it's all about. Be the light, spread the light. And yeah, I'm old school, so I only do one social media outlet, and that's Instagram, and it's Magnum Martinez. So that's pretty much what I kept it to. And you can DM me a direct message, and it'll take me maybe a couple days. I don't check it every single day, but I'll get back to you. And yeah, that's the best way to find me. I'm here in Puerto Rico most of the year. I travel to California in the summertime, and I'm definitely going to continue to expand on those better wave training camps in Indonesia. Found an amazing location, and man, just happy to be doing what we're doing, and be in shape, and being blessed, family and health and surf.
Nice. All right, Magnum. It was a pleasure as always. I'll see you around.
All right, brother. Thank you.